Hello guys, Avadi again. Welcome back to this another lesson 6 on Spring Boot playlist. I'm very excited to see you again back on this next session. So this video is about giving you an understanding on how to create a simple REST controller and how to create a simple endpoint which you can call it in your client, and then you can be able to get the response back from your application. So guys, in the previous lesson 5 we have created a simple Spring Boot application, but we were not able to get response because we did not configure any endpoint. So in this particular video we're going to create on Spring Boot. So in the previous we were able to send a request and we got this white label error. So we want to avoid this and create an application and create an endpoint where we send a request and we are able to get the desired response back in our application. So without having to waste our time, let us go back to our IDE, and we are going to open the application which we created in the previous lesson. So I'm going to this file, tap, and then I'm going to open the most recent project. So in the previous lesson we created this project called Code Archive Learning Management System, and here I'm going to open it in a new window. So guys, you can see this is the project which we created in the previous lesson, in the previous video. And here we had this one package, one class, which is the controller, this main class. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to create a symbol controller and a symbol endpoint. So you can see when you run this project right now, it does not give you any response back. It gives you a white label error because there is no any endpoint configured. So we are going to first implement this structure by first of all creating a controller where we have endpoint and which can be called by the client. And then in the next lesson we are going to implement these other subsequent layers. So for us to implement there, you first create a folder which is called controller or something related to any name you can give. So I'm going to create a new package in this main package, and I'm going to call it controllers. So this is just a package which I have created, and this is where I'm going to store all my controller classes so that it can be easy to manage. So here in this package I'm going to right click and then create a new class, new Java class, and that Java class I'm going to call it hello controller. Maybe start it with the capital letter hello controller. Alright, so this is the main this is the class which I have created. The class name is hello controller, and then I'm going, because I want to make it a controller where I can define my endpoints, then I'm going to use another Spring Boot annotation called the REST controller. Another annotation called the REST controller. This is the controller which will tell Spring Boot that this is particular class, it is the controller class. It is the controller component which we talked about in this architecture. And this component is where we define our endpoint which can be called by our application, by our clients. So this is the annotation which we use to tell Spring Boot that this particular class is going to be a REST controller. And then I'm going to add another annotation called the request mapping. So this request mapping here, it normally takes a parameter of the string, and here I'm going to define and say API slash maybe v1. And so this request mapping is what tells this annotation, it is what tells the Spring Boot that any request that comes from the client should be mapped, which has got this, it should be mapped to this controller class. So when a client sends any request, like for example http localhost slash API slash v1. Then this particular request, when the request comes which has got this format, then it should be mapped to this particular controller, and this controller should be able now to define how it is going to handle that request. So now in this within this controller class, we are going to define the methods which will handle any request that comes in, because when a request comes with this, then it should be given to this controller class, and this controller class should define the method which should handle that request, which should process that request and send back the response. So we are going to define one method called public. This method should return a string. It should return a string public, and then the type should be return type should be string, and then the method name maybe should be greetings. Maybe we say this is a method which just sends back the greetings. And then in the method body, we should be able to return this welcome. The previous text we said we want to return welcome to code archive learning, or code archive student portal, since this is the application that we are going to build here. This is the application that we're going to build here. So what will happen is that when we send a request with this URL, then it is going to be given to this class, and then this class is going to call this method. But for us to make this method visible to this controller, then we need to annotate this method with another annotation called the GetMapping. And then this GetMapping, it can take a parameter. Maybe we say here slash greeting, since this method is a greeting method. So what will happen is that because we said that any request that comes from a client, the request can be a get request, it can be a post request, or put request, or delete request. So when it is a get request, which means that the client is simply going to get some data from the server. When it is a post request, which means that the client here is sending some data to the server, and this data is going maybe to be added to the database. When it is a put request, which means that we are going to update some data, and when it is a delete request, which means that we are going to delete some data on the server. So here, what we are specifying here, we are specifying that any request that comes with this endpoint is going to be a get request, and that is why we are annotating this method to be with a get mapping, so that this method now is a get. It is going to process any get request that comes with this URL. So when we send the request there, the request will be slash API slash v1 then slash greetings. So when it comes with that, then API v1 will be mapped to this controller, and then the controller will know that any request that has got slash greetings should be mapped to this method. And when it is mapped to this method now will execute, and it will return this string which we have defined here. This string that we have defined here, it will be returned to the client which was making the request. All right, so let us run this project, and then we are going to our client. For now we are using the browser, so we are going to send the request to this particular endpoint. So this is the endpoint that we need to call, and then we can see that this controller will be able to execute this method, and we will be able to get this response back in our page, instead of getting the white label error. And then also we are going to demonstrate how we can do the same, how we can send the same request using the Postman. All right, so our application is running, and you can see it starts with the Spring Boot logo, and then the version of the Spring Boot we are using. And then some here it has started Tomcat server on port 8080, and now it has already started 9 seconds. So let us go back to our browser, and here we are going to type http://localhost port 8080/API then /v1, and then we are going to add /greeting so that we can be mapping to the specific endpoint. So when we send a request here, sorry, I think I've typed the wrong endpoint. So here the endpoint is just greeting, not greetings. So you should remove this S. So when we send this request, we should be able to get this response, which is the method which has been returned by this particular method. So you can see here we have our response and instead of a white label error. So you can say welcome to Code Archive student portal. So we can go still the same, and we can send the same request in the Postman. So in the Postman, the way we do it is that we are going to open a new tab, and then we are going to specify what type of request are we sending. So we have different kind of requests. It can be a get, post, put, or patch, or delete. For our case, we are using the get request because our method, the endpoint here is a get endpoint. And then we are going to paste the URL to that. And when we click send, and then we are going to get the same response back here. All right, and you can see the code here is 200, and the response has gone for 46 milliseconds, and it has consumed 2 bytes. So this is the size of the response we are getting. So guys, this is all about how to create a symbol controller and how to create a symbol endpoint. So in the next video, we will build on top of that and add many more endpoints and even define more controller class to perform different functionalities. So for now, I believe you are okay with how to create a controller. First, you need to define a package which will store all your controller classes, and then in that package you are going to create a controller class which is annotated with REST controller, and then annotated also with REST request mapping. And then you are going to, within that controller class, you are going to define the different endpoint methods or endpoint function, so that it can be able to handle the different requests. So these ones, we call them the endpoint methods or endpoint functions. All right. So guys, this is all about. If you find the content useful, you can consider subscribing so that you can get the newest content, and also you can consider sharing it to a friend. See you in the next video, where we look at the next implementation, how to initialize a database and how to tell Spring Boot to connect to this specific database. So otherwise, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.